Hi, this is John with Volusion Studios, and today in this tutorial I'm going to go through how to create an installer for your Unreal project. So we noticed in the forums a lot of people asking how to do this, and we didn't really know how to do it ourselves, and so we did a little research and found a pretty good workflow to create installers for our projects, and we wanted to share that with the community. So what we're doing is we're using the Nullsoft Scriptable Install System. I should say there are many different ways you can create installers. This happened to be the way that works best for us, and it's great because it's open source. It's extremely customizable. The one thing that may be a downside for some users is that this scriptable install system is exactly what it says. It is scripting, meaning there is no UI on top of this system that you're actually using to build your installer. So that might seem a little bit scary to some people who are used to working with blueprints or just doing visual scripting, or haven't written a bunch of code. It's really not that bad though. So bear with this tutorial, and I think you'll find that it is totally doable even if you have never written a line of code before. Um, it's pretty straightforward, and for those that are familiar with code, this will seem very intuitive, very easy, and very familiar. So let's go ahead and look at what you'll need to create an installer for your project. So if you're following along with this, you'll want to download the Nullsoft Scriptable Install System. So you can get that just by doing a search in your browser, and it will take you to the Nullsoft Scriptable Install System. Here I am on SourceForge, and you can download it and install it on your system, and it'll install all the things that you need to build installers. The other thing that you're going to need to create installers is you're going to need a good text editor. So what I mean by that is not Microsoft Word, not a word processing text editor. What you need is a text editor that is useful for scripting or writing code. And so the one that we are using is Notepad++, which I highly recommend. It's an excellent piece of software. It's also available for free, and you can use it and download it, and it works great. And it has something called syntax highlighting, which, if you're not familiar with writing code, is incredibly useful in making the code readable for humans. So that's one of the great things that Notepad++ has, and it already comes preloaded with syntax highlighting for the Nullsoft Scriptable Install System. So that's really great. So you'll want those two pieces of software to begin. So before we dive in to looking at the code and building an installer, I want to go over some high-level kind of overview of how this system works. So let's look at this diagram for a minute. So what we're creating with the Nullsoft Scriptable Install System is we're creating a script. So you're creating a text file that has all the stuff in it that you need to create your installer. So a script file might have any number of things going into it. So it might have references to image files that you're going to use in your installer. It might have references to header files, which are other text files that have code in them that allows you to do special things, and you're just including those in your script. It may have macros. A good way to think of macros, if you're used to working in Unreal, is something like the nodes in Blueprint. So a macro is just a chunk of code, basically, that allows you to do something. So it's like in Blueprints, if you drop down a node to transform an actor. That would be kind of an example of a macro. So you might be using macros in your script. You might also be referencing other text files. And when I say text files here, I'm not talking about script files with code in them. I'm talking about human readable text files. So These would be files that you might write up in your word processing software. Like if you have a license agreement, for example, that your installer is going to use, you would be putting that in a text file that your script would then reference. So once we create this script, what's going to happen is we're going to send it through the compiler. And that word should sound pretty familiar to you if you've been working in Unreal, because the same concept applies when you are finished with your game and you're ready to build it. So basically what the system is doing is it's taking all the instructions you've written down in the script and all the references to images and header files and text files and things, and it's putting them all into one single file. And that single file that it creates for us is an application file, which is this installer.exe file. So that's what the compiler is doing, and that's kind of the workflow that we're going to go through to create our installer. So we're going to be focusing mostly on how do we create this script, because the compiler does all the work for us. It just puts it all together. So what this looks like in the end, let me show you what we're actually going to be having when we're all finished. When you're all finished, you'll get a file like this. And if I right click on this and we look at the properties, you'll notice that this is an application file .exe. So this file is what you will send out to your users. So when it's all done, it'll pop, I double click on it and it pops up my installer. So here I've got a license agreement, which is a text file, and I can click on I agree. I can choose the components that I want to install, where I want to install them, etc. Okay, so this is what we are going to get when all of our script files are compiled together. We're going to get one final exe file. And let's go ahead and quit out of this, and you can send this out to your users and it will install it on their system. I should also mention that this tutorial is for Windows installers only. So this system is specifically for creating a Windows installer. So those of you that are working on Mac or Linux or other operating systems, you'll probably have to find a different way of doing this. And that's a lot more technical and goes into a lot of other things that we don't have time to cover in this tutorial. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Let's go ahead and look at how we do this. So the best way to get started, honestly, is probably to just look at some of the examples that are in the folder that comes with your Nullsoft Scriptable Install System. So you'll have a desktop icon when you install it. If you right click on that and you say open file location, it will actually take you to program files where all the stuff for this system is installed. And in there you will find a folder called examples. If you open this up, there are tons of examples, so many. All of these are different script files that you can look at and you can use as templates to begin your own installer. So let's look at the bare bones, most simple one we can. Let's go ahead and look at example 1. So if I click on this and I right click and I say edit with Notepad++, it'll bring it up inside of Notepad. And this is it. This is the installer right here. So it's 40 lines of text. And actually most of this text is just comments. So you'll see all this green text is actually not being used by the computer or the compiler. This green text is only here for us to be able to read. So it's called a comment if you're not used to coding. So writing comments in your file is a great idea because it makes reading the script much easier for someone who's not familiar with it. So you'll notice what they've done here in this example 1, they've put the name of the file here at the top, and they've given us a little description about what this file is. And then they've used these dashes here to separate the script into sections. And then they've used comments to label every single command that they're actually creating. So all of this green, this is all comments. None of it actually is being used to create the installer. It's just here for us. And the installer is incredibly simple. So there's actually only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines of actual code that's being used to create this installer. So let's see what this looks like when we actually run it. So if you double click your Nullsoft Scriptable Install System icon on your desktop, you'll be presented with this menu. And you're like, what is this menu? What am I supposed to do with this? How do I create an installer with this? Well, you don't. This is here mostly to just get you to places that you might want to read documentation. Like if you want to read up on some of the plugins you may need to use or online help documentation here. But the other thing this has is it has links to the compiler that we are going to use to compile our scripts. So if I click on the compile NSI scripts, it will actually bring up the compiler. And so this is the program, the application that is going to take our script and it's going to give us the runnable installer file at the end. So this is where all the work is happening, really. So what we can do is we can actually just drag and drop scripts into this compiler and it will compile them for us. So if we take that example1 file here, I can take this and I can drag and I can drop it here inside my compiler and it will automatically start to compile. But you'll notice it started to compile, but I got an error because it says it can't open this output file. So it took me a little while to figure this out, but the reason this is happening is because this script lives inside of program files on my main hard drive, and so you need administrator privileges to write and write files into this location, and this is why this is failing. If I actually go ahead and make a copy of this, I'm just going to copy it and I'm going to paste it on the desktop. Where to paste it? There it is. Okay, so here's my script file on the desktop. If I take that file and I now drag it in, it will finish compiling. So you see it finished, and when it finishes, these two buttons light up. We can either close the compiler or we can run our test installer. This is just like double-clicking our installer icon. So it would be the exact same as double-clicking the finished icon. Okay, that's what test installer is doing. And you'll notice here is the icon that it created on my desktop. Okay, so this is the example1 installer.exe. Whoops. So here it is. So I can double click it and it will start this example1 installer. And it gives me the destination folder and I can click install. Okay, so that's all it's doing. So if I click this, it will install it. You'll notice here's what it did. It created this example1 folder and then it's done. Okay, so that is what the example1 installer is doing. Incredibly simple. Okay, but that's the basic workflow. We're going to write a script in here. We're going to then open up our compiler, load the script in, compile it, and then we'll test the installer and make sure that it works. So I should mention as well that you don't just have to drag and drop files into the compiler. You can also come here and you can say load script. And this will bring up a dialog where you can actually navigate to those scripts. So let's see. I think we'll go ahead and we will stop there for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we're going to actually go over the parts of this script. And we're going to look at what is putting it together, what's making it work, and then we'll go into a more advanced tutorial, more advanced script about how to customize your installer. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for part 2 of creating an installer. Thanks. Bye.